In this podcast episode, Ben Shapiro delves into the pressing geopolitical tensions facing the world today, particularly focusing on the threats posed by Russia, China, and Iran. He discusses how these nations are testing the limits of U.S. foreign policy and whether former President Donald Trump could be the key to averting a global conflict. Shapiro opens the discussion by highlighting the escalating threats from Russia and Ukraine, China regarding Taiwan, and Iran's nuclear ambitions. He suggests that Trump, with his unique approach to foreign policy, may be the figure capable of addressing these challenges effectively. The podcast emphasizes the urgency of the situation, especially in light of recent military actions and political maneuvers by these nations. The conversation shifts to Trump's recent statements made on Memorial Day. Shapiro criticizes Trump for using the occasion to attack his political opponents, which he believes detracts from the solemnity of the day meant to honor fallen soldiers. However, he acknowledges a more positive aspect of Trump's Memorial Day activities, specifically his speech at Arlington National Cemetery, where he honored Gold Star families and the sacrifices of American heroes. Shapiro then explores the concept of the Trump Doctrine in foreign policy, referencing comments made by J.D. Vance at the Naval Academy. Vance argues that the Trump administration's approach marked a departure from previous U.S. foreign policy, which often prioritized nation-building over national defense. Shapiro expresses skepticism about the clarity of this doctrine, noting that it lacks a definitive framework and raises questions about how the U.S. should engage with adversaries. The podcast continues with a discussion on military engagement, particularly in the context of the Houthi conflict in the Middle East. Shapiro critiques the administration's handling of this situation, arguing that while the U.S. has set certain goals, the outcomes have not aligned with the stated objectives. He emphasizes the need for a clear exit strategy in military engagements, a point echoed by Vance, who advocates for a more disciplined approach to foreign policy. Shapiro also addresses the issue of U.S. defense spending, noting that it has declined significantly as a percentage of GDP over the years. He argues that in a world perceived as increasingly dangerous, there is a compelling case for increasing military spending to ensure national security. He contrasts the current spending levels with historical data, suggesting that the U.S. must reassess its military commitments and capabilities. The podcast shifts gears to domestic issues, particularly the ongoing debate over federal spending and the national debt. Shapiro highlights the challenges faced by the Republican Party in addressing these issues, especially in light of the recent Big Beautiful Bill passed by the House. He critiques the bill for not adequately addressing the deficit and for being filled with pork, arguing that true fiscal responsibility requires a more thorough examination of federal spending. Shapiro discusses the Biden administration's approach to student loans, noting that the government is now enforcing collections on defaulted loans. He suggests that this move could lead to significant financial repercussions for many borrowers, particularly those who pursued degrees that do not yield high-paying jobs. He advocates for a more critical examination of the educational system and the promises made by universities regarding job prospects. The podcast also touches on the challenges facing the Democratic Party, particularly its struggle to connect with working-class voters. Shapiro references a New York Times article that outlines the party's declining approval ratings and the perception that it is increasingly aligned with elite interests. He points out that the Democrats' focus on identity politics and progressive issues may alienate a significant portion of the electorate. In a notable move, Shapiro discusses Trump's decision to sever federal contracts with Harvard University, citing the institution's alleged anti-Semitic atmosphere. He argues that this action is a populist strategy that resonates with many Americans who feel disenfranchised by elite institutions. Shapiro suggests that redirecting funds from Harvard to trade schools could be a beneficial move for the country, emphasizing the need for practical education that leads to employment.